Bryce, and I'm at it. Grateful to have the opportunity to be here today. And I truly am grateful that I was asked to do this, and grateful to be able to come up here. It really is a beautiful place. I had the opportunity to come last time it was here, and it made a big impression on me. Being able to come up here and enjoy something like this without having to use is a huge change of life. Being able to go places and do things, that's just wonderful, and that's why I say that I'm grateful to be here. There was a time not too long ago, very recently, where I wasn't being very grateful. There was some things that were going on in my life, and that still are, that didn't give me that sense of gratitude anymore. It's been and was one of the hardest periods in my recovery. But through this process and having faith in the people around me that have been through these things has helped me to get to where I'm at today, has helped me to still be able to come and be here today. Even though when I got here yesterday, I was a little bit angry. I walked in my room and I was a little angry, man, because I walked in my room by myself. And that wasn't the plan, right? That wasn't the plan this year. And that's just not the way that it worked out, unfortunately, but I'm still grateful that I'm here and was able to come. So tradition 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. I've had the opportunity to be involved with service ever since they would allow me to. My first opportunity was to be the secretary of my home group, and the guy who was the secretary was also doing a handful of other things, and he needed help. And they gave me the calendar for scheduling chairing and stuff like that before the meeting started, and I was so happy to be able to do this. And I put the calendar underneath my chair, and I got up and I left that meeting and left the calendar there. Right? And they said, Bryce, I don't think you're quite ready yet. And they were probably right, because if I couldn't even handle holding onto a calendar, it'd be kind of hard to organize, things like people chairing and stuff like that. But as time went on, I did have the opportunity to be the secretary of my home group. And I've had the opportunity to be involved with a number of different things with H&I and different levels at our area, and one thing that I've learned through all of that is it's not all about me. And that has helped a lot, because I'll still get wrapped up in my mind thinking that things are all about me. I'm glad that I got a chance to go first, because otherwise I would have probably sat there and went over in my mind like over and over, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? Because my mind will still play tricks on me. And I do know that my mind is out to get me. And that it'll still tell me those things, that you're not good enough and you don't belong. And when those things happen are when I just need to take a second and just breathe. So I was going through tradition 2 a little bit, thinking about, a speaker mentioned last night that the traditions are also about the relationships that I have in my life. And they help me to build relationships and interact with people in my life and not, not have the focus all be about me and be totally self-centered. It helps me to be there for other people. And I can remember when I came into this program, and that's really all it was just about Bryce, right? The getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. I didn't have a conscience. There's not even really a conscience. I didn't have a conscience because it didn't matter what I did as long as I could continue to use. It didn't matter. Relationships didn't matter. Family didn't matter. doing the right thing. None of that stuff mattered to me. I had suppressed that voice inside of me for so long that it was hard to even hear anymore. And that voice was my conscience. And it says in here, something happens when we practice these steps and learn to apply principles in our individual lives. We develop an awareness of our behavior and its effect on ourselves and others. In other words, we develop a conscience. And that's one of the things that has happened since I've stayed clean is I've developed a conscience. I try to think about not just what's best for Bryce, but what's best for other people in my life. As a result of staying clean, I've gotten married and I've had 3 kids. I have an 8-year-old and I have twins. And luckily, gratefully, those kids have never seen me use, and trying to think of other people besides just myself. Kids will do that for me, because I have more than just Bryce to worry about today. I have 3 little kids that I have to keep in mind at all times. And they are very, very important to me, and somewhere along the lines, I had lost track of that recently, and their importance had fallen to the side just a little bit, and I've had a chance to spend a lot more time with them on an individual level than I ever have before, and it's been great. We've had some very amazing times lately that Narcotics Anonymous has given me that opportunity to take them places and do things. It talks about, as members listen carefully to each other and consult their personal understandings of a loving God, something happens. Solutions to problems become apparent. Solutions that take into consideration the needs of everyone concerned. So trying to apply tradition 2 into my life, and I was thinking about how do I do that, and how has it played a part. So one of the things that recently has happened is with that involvement that I've had, so I think about group conscience, right? So how do I do group conscience at home? It can be something as simple as, okay, guys, what do you guys want to eat today? Right? Not just something like, okay, this is what we're eating, and you guys, if you don't like it, then don't eat. Right? Because there's a time, right, not too far away where, fine, just don't eat, and I thought that was the way to do it. But really, things always seem to work out better when I get out of my way and allow other people to contribute as well. And even if those other people are the little people in my life. So, and on the other side of that, let's think about, for me, right now I'm the policy chair of our area. And something that has been undergoing has been revising our guidelines. And somebody had started that, and they got the area off to a really good start with it when we switched over to consensus-based decision-making from Robert's Rules of Order. And they had gotten a really good start to it. And when I was chair of the area, I realized the importance of our guidelines and how outdated they were, and things were very just kind of like thrown together just to kind of get something going. So I put in a letter of willingness for policy chair because I had saw the importance of that. And as policy chair, I've realized that it's not really like, the most popular thing that everybody wants to be a part of. So I quickly realized that I was going to be relying on our chairperson because that's one of his responsibilities. And then luckily, another member stepped up and said, yeah, I'll help out. So it's been a committee of 3 to get things going, get things through the draft approval. And something that happened at one of our policy subcommittee meetings was the H&I meeting was going on at the same exact time, and we were in the same room, but we were across the table from each other. And somebody who I guess I have a hard time dealing with, because to get his point across takes 20 minutes to get to that point. All right? But when I stopped for a second and listened to some of his suggestions that he had for the guidelines, and even though I was resistant to it in the beginning, it made a lot of sense in the end, right? Because he had some very valid points on how we can update these things, right? So being a leader, right, being a trusted servant does not mean that I have the final say in things, right? I'm just the person that the area put, some trust into to say, yeah, okay, we think that you would be a good person to get this job done. And at that point in time, it's my responsibility to have a little bit of open-mindedness, even when it comes to people who I might struggle with, to try and have a little bit of open-mindedness that Bryce's way isn't the best all the time, and Bryce isn't always right, and other people's opinions truly do matter. And when we were working through this stuff and working through these guidelines, one of the things that I did is I had continually, every month, every time that we met and things were changed and updates were published, I emailed everybody that was on the email list, and I posted a link so that everybody could access it. And I also made a page of all the changes, every time that there was changes, so that way you could kind of see the things that were going on. And when we got to that final approval stage, and I was so excited because, okay, this has been a decent amount of work, and we're finally going to be able to get these out there to all the groups, and everybody approves it, and I think, yes, okay, this is it. I'm going to be able to finalize this. And then somebody says, well, wait a minute, what about... And it's like, man, where has your input been for the last 3 months? And now you want to step up and say, well, what about? And sometimes that can be hard, because then Bryce gets back in the way and wants to say, no, it's too late. You had your chance. You've been on this email list. These are the approvals now, and everybody approved it. So rather than taking that approach, I individually talked to this person, right? And I said, okay, so, here's the thing. We're at this stage now. What is it that you think that could help? And it turned out to just be grammar and spelling stuff, right? And I'm like, okay, sweet. That's all it was. It wasn't the fact that, I think that we should change this into this and we should do this differently. It was just things that they wanted to help with different grammar and the way that wording was, right? And that was nice because I didn't have to go there, right? I didn't have to go to that point of, nope, it's over, it's done, we approved it. Instead I had the opportunity to listen to what this person had to say, right? And those times are when the disease and the recovery voices that sound exactly the same in my head, right? When they split paths, right? And then I have the opportunity to choose which one I'm going to listen to. And sometimes it's not always that easy to listen to the recovery voice. It says the conscience of the group is most clearly expressed when every member is considered equal. A higher power works through all of us regardless of clean time or experience. It was very strange to me when I sat in a meeting and for whatever reason I looked around and I realized I had the most clean time in that meeting. And that was really weird. And that was my home group, which meant at our business meetings, I had the most clean time. And I'm not saying this because clean time is the most important thing. I'm saying that because then people started looking to me to say at our business meetings, well, what do you think, Bryce? Well, what does Bryce think, right? And I don't want it to be like that, because I remember doing that to other people. And I remember sitting in a business meeting and my sponsor at the time looking at him to see what he was going to say, and then I would jump on board with that. And I didn't want that to become an issue in my home group, because everybody is equal. And it doesn't matter who has the most clean time at that point, because everybody's opinions and everybody's beliefs still count, no matter the clean time. And that's something that I've had to learn throughout this process, is that everybody has good ideas and everybody's opinions matter. And likewise, let's flip that outside of Narcotics Anonymous, right? Those 3 little people in my life, their opinions matter. And sometimes I have to slow myself down when we're doing things, because I need to keep in mind that if I want this group, my family, my kids, if I want this group to be successful, and if I want this group to feel like they all belong, then it can't always just be what Dad wants to do. It can't always just be one of my favorite things and hardest things to hear from them is, Dad, I know you're going to say no, but do you think, right? And it's like, it's that bittersweet where it's like, man, I don't like hearing that, but at the same time it's kind of funny because the way that they come across with it. But sometimes I also need to keep in mind that when those statements are made, they don't mean it negatively. However, I need to look at that as, okay, well, if Dad's always saying no, then is everybody considered an equal? And am I giving everybody in my family the opportunity to participate in the decision-making process? Sometimes I don't do it very well. Can we have candy right before bed? No. So it's like there still is that fine line that I do need to be that leader who has their best interest in mind, even when, well, I know you're going to say no, but, even when those things come up. But when it comes to other activities and stuff like that, I have that ability today to give them a voice. And that's because Narcotics Anonymous taught me that everybody's opinion matters. Tradition 2 talks about that. One of the spiritual principles, I was doing like a little bit of a crash course listening to Tradition 2 because I have it on audio this morning when I got up. Because, like, for me, I found when I study before I'm going to speak, then things don't really come out the way that I want it to. And it's not really a message of Bryce's, recovery. It's like a textbook, type of thing. So when it talks about spiritual principles, humility prepares us to set aside our personal wishes so that we can effectively serve our fellowship. Humility is very important. And I see that today, and our literature talks about humility is, along the lines of humility is equally as important as air and water, is to living. And sometimes I struggle with that. Sometimes I do better than other times, and sometimes it's hard for me to set aside my personal desires or my personal wishes. When I think about it at the home group level, again, my mind sometimes will take over, and sometimes I might not be as open-minded to some of the newcomers that come in, and I need to check myself on that at times. And sometimes I want things a certain way, like, no, I don't want to change this format because it's been the format for this long, but then that's Bryce staying in the way. That's Bryce's will being pushed onto the group. And honestly, sometimes a change is necessary to keep things alive. Right now, my home group, has been kind of struggling. We've only got myself and one other member who I can say is active. We've got another home group member who, is very spontaneous, and and it's hard sometimes to continue to go. But one thing is for sure, my work schedule is very up and down. And sometimes I will go from working 50 hours a week to working 75 hours a week. And those 75-hour periods could last for months at a time. And I might not be able to attend my home group until after it starts. And when I have the opportunity to be involved and be of service at the home group, and I'm not working a lot of hours, I'm very quick to offer up my service. I'll take the key, I'll open up the meeting, and I'll do this as long as I possibly can. Because who knows when things are going to change in my life to where I don't have that opportunity. And I come to the meeting and I sit down 15 minutes late and I sleep for the other hour and 15 minutes because it's on a Friday and I've worked a full week, and the only thing that I can do is just be physically there sometimes. And sometimes I it doesn't make me feel good that I do that, but I try and show up. And that's really the most important thing during those times, is just trying to show up. So back to the humility part, setting aside our personal wishes so we can effectively serve our fellowship. So how do I set aside my personal wishes outside of Narcotics Anonymous? So as of lately, I've been struggling with my personal wishes in my marriage, and I've been for probably 2.5 months or so. I've been trying to hold on, right, and I've been very focused on that aspect of my life, and to the point where I wasn't, I was so focused on trying to save something that I was forgetting about all the other wonderful things that I have in my life. Being able to serve, right? How about serving my family, like I mentioned? I mean, my kids, my family are very important to me. And there was a period of time recently where there would be 30-minute conversations that I would have with my wife outside, and the kids would just be inside playing, right? And I was so focused on we need to talk about these things, we need to work these things out, and we need to, that I wasn't being there for my kids. And people had told me, they're like, Bryce, the only thing, if this is what's going to happen with your life, the only thing that you should be focused on is those kids. You need to let her do what she's going to do, and you need to just focus on being there for those kids. And for a couple months there, I couldn't see that. I couldn't see that they're the most important things in that aspect of my life. And when I let go, and when I just said, okay, you got to go then. When I let go and started to focus on them, things became a lot easier. One thing that is hard for me today is having feelings. And I don't mean that it's hard having feelings. I mean that I don't have that ability anymore to shut feelings off. See, using allowed me to just disconnect from everything. And recovery has given me the ability to feel things today. But the difference between having feelings and holding on so tight, right, was hard for me to understand. So once I was able to let go, I was able to be of service to my family. I was able to be of service to my kids. And I've been able to be there for them, because the most important thing that's happening right now needs to be their mental and emotional stability. And I lost sight of that. I lost sight of the fact that there's people in my life that depend on me. I have the ability to be a good employee, and I've been put in the position of being a boss of 14 other people. And when I stay up until 2 in the morning because I'm having that conversation again, I can't be of service to other people in my life, because I can't make good decisions when I'm not taking care of myself. So applying tradition 2 in my life, being a leader, being of service to those around me, trying to practice some humility, is something that I will continue to work on. Something that I will continue to try and get out of my way, and remember that everybody in my life has good ideas. That everybody in my life, whether it's my kids or employees or other recovering addicts, they all matter. I'm just been put in a spot in some areas of my life where people have put trust in me to help make better decisions. But that doesn't mean that Bryce's decisions are always the right decisions. And I have to keep that in mind. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Bryce. And our second speaker is Karen A.
I'm an addict called Karen.
Hi, Karen.
So I've been all ego-based this morning, like all freaking out about this. Because don't y'all know traditions are for old-timers? Yeah, so... and then I look out and I see the people that helped to raise me here, and that really... and then Bryce starts stealing my material. For God's sake, come on. And I thank you for sharing that you did the crash course thing, because I did that also. I don't recommend studying before a workshop, because that did not work out well for me. I'll tell you a little bit how this happened. I get this phone call, and it's Sally. And first she asks if you want to do a workshop. And I'm like, sure. And then she tells you the topic. And she said, faith in the process. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all about the faith. Got the faith and the hope. And then she adds tradition too. And I'm like, ooh. Didn't hear much after that because of screaming in my head. But yeah, I've tried to work on my traditions. I've written on my traditions once, and then the Guiding Principles book came out, and I'm like, oh, cool. Now I can really learn my traditions, but I'll do that later, So this is the moment when I regret saying I'll do that later. A lesson in procrastination, and I've been putting a lot of pressure on myself. Tradition 2. I got to tell everybody about it. You know what? We all read the same books. We all know what the tradition says. This morning, I was sitting outside on the step, and I'm like, how am I gonna tell them about tradition 2? How am I gonna teach them about tradition 2? And my higher power said, you're not gonna teach anybody anything. And not your job. Your job is to give them your perspective. So that's what I'm gonna, I'm going to give it to you from Karen's point of view, and good luck with that. For me, the traditions and the steps, they're very commingled. I use my steps in working my traditions a lot, especially that principles over personalities one. And so I keep going back to, when I got here, you guys introduced me to step 2. And told me I had to have faith in something greater than myself. And for me, that started with you guys. Because in my experience, I'd come to Narcotics Anonymous and hung around for a little bit, and then went back out. But when I came back, a lot of the same people were here, doing the same things in the same meetings. So that right there helped with the whole faith in the process thing. So you guys began as my faith in something greater than myself, and I followed you around, and I listened to you, and that led me to find faith in a higher power of my own understanding. And so in step 3, I learned how to let that higher power work in my life. Like I put myself second. What is God's will for me? Is this Karen's will or is this God's will? And I still continue to struggle with that. I will catch myself grabbing hold of things and holding on to them because I can make them work. I'm going to make them work. It's got to be this way. And the minute that I let go of it, it works. So then you guys presented me with a really big challenge, and I had to have faith not only in my own higher power, but in tradition 2, I have to have faith in other people's higher powers, that we're going to bring our higher powers together and that it's going to be one higher, because I've got friends that have beliefs across the board, all kinds of different beliefs, all kinds of different higher powers, he, she, it, he, she, and a tree is what I like to say. So these trees and these he's and these she's are going to combine into one higher power while the group lovingly makes a decision. Now I have faith in my higher power. I don't know if do I have faith in your higher power? Do I have faith in you? And there again, that's where I have to put myself second. Because I have to have faith in the process. Narcotics Anonymous has been around since, actually before I was born. Not much, but before I was born, yeah, a little bit there. And so it survived a long time before I got here. And it was funny because when I first came into service, I started doing service as soon as I discovered what it was. And I can remember one of my earliest struggles with having faith in the process was that there was a meeting and they were talking about closing it. And that freaked me out. Like, you can't close a meeting. That'll be one less meeting. And I don't even think it was a meeting that I attended. But it was, I think once I heard they were going to close it, I attended it. Because it's got to survive. What will happen to Narcotics Anonymous if this meeting closes? And that was one of my first lessons in God's will and letting things happen as they should, because that meeting eventually closed and Narcotics Anonymous is still here. My studying backfired a little bit on me because last night I was going through something I had found that was like a question-answer thing on Tradition 2. And the first question was, what is a group? And the answer went something like, a group is 2 or more people that come together for the sake of recovery. I'm so bad at quoting, and I didn't write anything down because when I write stuff down, I sound stupid. But for recovery, 2 or more people coming together for the purpose of recovery. And then it goes on to explain that a service body is not a group. That's right. Mm-hmm. This is new information for me. Why am I... I came down this morning and I told Melissa this, and she's like, yeah, that's right. And I'm like, I never knew this. I thought when I went to area every darn month for the last 6 years, I thought that's what we were doing was group conscience, So yeah, I've got a lot to learn. Fortunately, moments like this help me to learn these things. So I'm really trying hard. My first MRCNA was here. So this is kind of full circle for me. This is kind of really weird. But that year, I was so crazed because when I came here, I was going to learn everything. And when I came here, I look at the brochure, the program, and y'all are scheduling like 3 workshops at the same time, like every couple of hours, 3 at the same time. How am I going to go to 3 workshops that are, So my thing was like, okay, I'll go to this one for half of it, and then I'll go to that one for half of it. My first MRCNA was crazy, people. I was like, I don't know if I met anybody. But then, the workshops that I didn't get to, I did not practice the principle of responsibility that year. I bought all of the CDs that spoke to the steps. I spoke all the CDs that spoke to the traditions. And that year, one of my friends was speaking on the traditions. And that CD I listened to a couple of times because it was pertinent to something I did a couple of years ago. So I'm like, sweet, I've got the CD. And so I kept it in my car and I listened to it. And so since I was told that this was what was going to be, my topic, the first line of that talk is all that keeps running through my head, And I told her yesterday, I said, I am not going to steal your line. And so I'm like struggling with how to say it without stealing her line, because all that's running through my head is, she said, tradition too speaks to me of service, and I just stole the line, Okay, kind of quoted her. But for me, that's the reality, because tradition too is about letting a loving higher power come in and guide the group, even if service isn't the group. But that allows me to put me second. That allows me to set my ego aside. That allows me to go to area. Is there anybody here from Saginaw Bay area, so I don't get in trouble? You don't come. But sometimes we have some strong personalities at area, and I think I've heard myself say at area before, we do not govern. But even that is insinuating my will on the situation, Service can be very challenging, because I'm a control freak, and if I hear something, if I learn something, if I read something, if somebody that I love and respect, or somebody that whatever, or if it's in writing in our literature, I very quickly go black and white, right and wrong. And one of the things that I've come to learn in recovery is that black and white doesn't always exist. I've always, being a controlling person, I want the world to be black and white because I want there to be a right way and a wrong way. I want there to be a good and bad. I want things to be easily defined. So that there is no question. I can take action without fearing that I've made the wrong decision, because I'm really good at making wrong decisions. But it isn't black and white. And that's where I have to work with other people. I have to be loving and caring. And I have to recognize that other people have other experiences, other people have other talents, other wisdom, and I have to allow all of that to come into the decision-making process. I have to listen to them in the hopes that they will listen to me. And that's kind of the humility thing, is the right and wrong. I have to humble myself and recognize that just because I believe it's black or white, just because I believe it's right or wrong, doesn't necessarily make it so. I have to humble myself and remember, I am not my higher power. I am not anybody else's higher power. Yeah, so, and that's where, you know, having that humility, practicing that humility, practicing that love, you know, like listening for what you say with love in my heart, like, okay, I don't like what you're saying, but I love you, so I'm going to listen. That to me speaks to the faith in the process. I was going through, again, back to my studying, I was really grateful that when I was questioning, like, where am I going to start? What am I going to say? I opened up my Guiding Principles book. We get the one that I haven't written or done anything with yet, outside of reading it. I opened my Guiding Principles book to Tradition 2, and of course it starts with the tradition and says something about it. But the first line under it, there's like a paragraph under that, and the first line says, having faith in the process, and again, I'm not quoting directly because I just can't, having faith in the process provides freedom. And freedom from my ego, freedom from my control issues, freedom from, you know, anger when you're not doing it the right way, you know, when you're not doing it my way. It truly is having faith in that process and believing that we can come together as a group and we're serving a greater purpose. I do not do service to be popular, because that hasn't worked. I do not do service. Yeah, generally it gets me in more trouble than it, you know, friends. I do not do service to, like, feed my ego, like, I'm somebody. Actually, somebody kind of, I don't know if they called me out or what you would call it, but I know that I'm a very ego-based person. And it's really funny because when I came into Narcotics Anonymous, I did not believe that. I did not believe I was a self-centered person. I did not believe that I was an ego-based person. Because my understanding, like working on Narcotics Anonymous program for a while, and every definition of every word you've ever known will change. But I believed that meant that, like, I thought it was great. And I thought, you know, like the girls in high school, the cheerleaders and stuff, they were the ones that had ego problems or whatever, yeah. No, I have an ego problem, but it just, I don't think I'm, what is it, egomaniac with self something. Yeah. So yeah. But so in order to not be that person, in order to not feed those defects, I will go to the other extreme. And so somebody found out, and they're not here. They weren't even coming to MRCNA, so I don't know why it mattered. But somebody found out that I was speaking here this year, and they kind of scolded me, like, you share those things with your family, you know, you share those things with your friends. We're here to support you. We love you. You know, those are good things in your recovery to share. And I'm like, well, I don't want to boast or brag, you know. So I still struggle with, like, what is ego and what is you know, like, I don't know. Yeah, I can't even come up with the other word because I struggle with that. But one of the things that I read when it came to Tradition 2, and I have to look into this. See, this is the problem with studying before you do something, because now there's a whole bunch of stuff that I got to go back and figure out. Because one of the things that I read is that, you know, I was reading about spiritual principles and the traditions and stuff, and it said that while love is incorporated into all of our traditions, Tradition 2 is the only one that talks about it. And it went on to list a couple of statements, you know, like the listening with love in our heart and speaking with love in our words and a couple of other things. So, yeah, you know, that has been both a good thing and a bad thing for me, because now when I go to area this month, I know that we're not practicing group conscience, but we are there for a singular purpose. I know that when I'm at my home group, and that's something that I've learned this year. That's something that I might not have learned had I not been assigned this topic. And one of the greatest things about Narcotics Anonymous for me is that it's a continuous process of learning. So while I may not be standing up here like giving you any great education, the whole group thing, you all nodded your heads yes, so I'm apparently the only one in the room that was in the dark on that one. It offers perspective. You know where I'm at, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the ability to do service and to continue to do service. And I don't think, even when I'm not practicing them as I should, without the traditions and the spiritual principles that I've learned there, and the limited knowledge that I have of the traditions, I don't think that I could continue to do service. There have been days where I've left our area service committee angry. Because again, I go back to that black and white. And that's not right, that's wrong. There's too much ego, or too much control. And I struggle with that because I enter the service body with the idea that everybody's thinking like me. We're all here for the same purpose. We're all here to serve the groups. We're going to do what's best for the area. And my area includes 3 reasonably sized towns and then a couple little here and there. And oftentimes it almost feels as though when you have service committee members, they're from 3 separate towns, it feels almost like there's and this is again my viewpoint, not an overall consensus thinking, but it sometimes feels like there's a struggle between, is it going to be Bay City? Is it going to be Midland? How come we don't have more events in Saginaw? Why are all the events in Bay City? Well, y'all never have events in Midland, and that's not who we are. We are the Saginaw. Okay, Saginaw is there. So Saginaw should come first, right? Because I'm from Saginaw. No. We are the Saginaw Bay Area, and we need to remember that. We recently, and I don't know if I handle this appropriate or not, but this wasn't one person. We have our little service committee, and then we have our little subcommittees, and a lot of subcommittees hold prudent reserves. And people were starting to talk about my money this, I spent my money on that, I don't want to spend my money on this, well, we're going to spend my money on this. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. I have a prudent reserve, and it's not my money. I hold that prudent reserve for the service committee. So anybody in this room that has money, that is service committee money, and if it requires subcommittees working together, or one subcommittee financially supporting another subcommittee, that's fine, because that ain't y'all's money, that's their money. We don't have a literature chair right now, and we are in need of a couple starter kits, and so they approached another committee, and I happen to be the chair of that subcommittee. So my question to the group after, because I said, at an area recently, like, this is the service committee's money, but yet when I was presented with this request, I said, I will willingly do that. I have the willingness, as long as nobody has any questions about me using the PR prudent reserve. And everybody's like, that's fine. And the thing is the subcommittee reimburses the prudent reserve. It's their money. So I feel like I've said absolutely nothing here. I am incredibly grateful that I had this opportunity to do this. It's been very educational for me. I'm sorry you guys had to be a part of the process. No, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that you came here and we're part of the process. Because without y'all, I'd be a mess. I wouldn't know anything that I know today, and I definitely wouldn't be continuing to learn today. So thank you very much. That's all I've got.